Listeners, rolling through negotiations enthusiasts, I reckon this one might give our very special guest away. But check this out. Imagine you're in a classroom environment and you say, here it is. Here's the resume. Professor Callahan says it's pink. Then you say, oh, and it's scented. I think it gives it a little something extra. Don't you think? That were the words spoken by Earl Woods, played by Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde. And it ties so well into the guest we have today. Before we get started, though, I want to acknowledge First Nations peoples as the traditional custodians of the lands all throughout Australia. We pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and to our next generation of leaders in pursuit of the brighter future. So why that bit of role playing? Why the quote from the movie Legally Blonde? Nikolina Tully.
Hello, thank you for having me, Matthew. I'm so excited to be here. And I'd like to firstly acknowledge the Turrbal and Jagera people as the traditional custodians of the land in which I meet you today virtually. Love your little play there about the movie Legally Blonde, my inspiration from my childhood.
Yeah, and the movie resonates with you. The color pink resonates with you. You're here connecting with us right now. Pink background, pink suit on. It's your color.
Right. It so is. And that movie just brings back so many amazing memories from my, I should say, teenagehood and when I was at university, and what kind of gave me the inspiration to start a pink law firm. And yeah, it really resonated with me, that movie. And I actually remember years ago, God, I'm showing my age, like 20 years ago, saying to people at the law firm that I worked at, I'm going to start a law firm one day, and it's going to be all pink, and I'm going to have pink paper, and it's going to be scented, just like that script of the movie you just read out. So
Yeah.
perfect.
And Nicolina, being a pink law firm has something that you've really gone out there and shone an amazing light on. You've got some really amazing awareness through this, but some people might be saying pink is just a color. It's more than that, though, isn't it? How do you answer those sorts of people?
Yeah, look, I get asked that question all the time. It's interesting. You get some people who just go, wow, that's so cool that you've done that. Like, it's different, it's authentic, and it's, you're stepping outside the comfort zone or the thought process of what people perceive a law firm should look like. And like for me, pink is represents so many things. It has a feminine and masculine side to it. It represents ultimately hope. And that's obviously one of the main things for what I do as a personal injury lawyer. But it ultimately came down, yes, there was inspiration from the movie Legally Pink, but that movie resonated with me because it for me, it represented authenticity. It represented accepting who you are, believing in yourself, and being true to yourself, and achieving whatever you want and desire in life, and being able to do that successfully, being your own person, not having to be a follower. So for me, was the number one thing. Is like, often we can, because we are different, everyone is different in their own characteristics, and that's formulated by many things I guess we're going to be talking about today, like culture, authenticity, all those kind of things, religion, backgrounds. So what makes us unique to ourselves? And for me, that's what I wanted to be. Me is always about being who I am. I never wanted to be a follower. I always wanted to, for me, living my authentic life is being authentically me and being true to myself. And I hope that in doing that, I'm able to inspire others to believe in themselves.
Beautifully spoken and well said. And the first words that came out of your beautifully articulated response was the feminine and masculine that is represented by pink.
That's right.
Part of us may say, hang on a second, pink can't be a masculine color, but it can. I was wondering, can you explain how is pink a way of embracing masculinity?
That's right. Well, we all as human beings have half our father and mother's DNA. So we all have a masculine and feminine side. And maybe one side might be more dominant than the other. But at the end of the day, we are made up of those genetics and DNA. And that to me, pink, because it is made up of the colors red and blue, which
Mm.
represents male, masculine, and feminine sides, and that's how those colors are combined, which makes pink. And I know socially and environmentally, we're grown up with colors associated with certain with certain things in life, such as pink being a girl's color, blue being a boy's color. But that's also a society thing that's developed over time in terms of maybe economics and things like that. But really, essentially, pink can be a masculine color. And often, I mean, one of the funny things with starting an all pink law firm is the amount of response I've gotten from men in the industry and outside the industry, and even, locals in my community where I work and so forth, coming to me and just saying, like, thank you for doing this.
Mm.
One, the industry needed it, but two, you've kind of embraced who you are. And not only is it targeted to inspire women, but it has inspired men to be authentic to themselves as well. And it doesn't just mean from a masculine point of view.
Beautiful. And you also helped me learn something that perhaps I should have learned in primary school, that red and blue make pink.
With a bit of white in there.
Yeah, well, that's pretty awesome. And I also love the way that you are able to embrace authenticity in terms
Mhm.
of following your
Yeah.
dream, representing who you are, and in a world where sometimes people find it difficult
And
to show their authenticity.
I think it's actually really coincidental that we're talking about this today in terms of like culture and stuff like that, because I think a lot of who I am does stem from the fact that my ethnicity, my background is Croatian, but I was born and raised in Australia. I did live in Croatia for a little bit when I was younger, and but there has always been a sense of I am kind of the not the odd one out, but I was different growing up at school and things like that. And culturally, that was because of my background. And maybe some of me wanting to be purely authentic to who I am is learning over the years. And as you get wiser and older, is learn to be kind to yourself and learn to accept who you are. And, we've all gone through things in our lives and tough times and things like that, and experienced different things. And, whether it's professionally or personally, but at the end of the day, I think, you will always succeed and achieve greater things in life and be happy within yourself if you are authentic to who you are and not trying to be someone society tells you to be or behave and act in a way. Obviously, there is fundamental ethics and morality associated with be who you are, do the right thing, those fundamentals of life.
Yeah.
But be who you are in terms of don't be afraid to be the quirky self you are, or, acceptance of who you are if you do things differently, and learn to love yourself, those kind of things.
Yeah. And I think that authenticity is a beautiful place to be sharing from. In some ways, it's almost like a buzzword where a lot of people do speak about being authentic. But I wonder if we all know how to find that place within ourselves, and how
Mm,
can we actually live from a place of authenticity.
that's right.
How in your view, and this is a question that I think that knowing the answer for sure might be challenging for us. I don't think that I fully know the answer for sure, but I'd love to just hear, your thoughts on how can we find that authenticity within ourselves to help us in negotiations.
Yeah, well, I think we have to know authenticity within ourselves first before we can represent anyone and be able to negotiate successfully. Because I think, over the years, as I said previously, you experience your high and the low, and it's all about how you manage those challenges in life. And that's what makes us who we are individually. But accepting yourself
Yeah.
and being authentic to yourself is having a true knowing of who you are. And once you have a true knowing of who you are and stand by your own ethics and morals, then you'll be able to do the same for someone else. It's like the old saying, you can't love someone until you love yourself. I think the same goes in negotiations. And part of that is having a sense of emotional intelligence and understanding of yourself and self-awareness.
Yeah.
If you can do that for yourself, then you should be able to successfully do that for someone else and represent them in negotiations.
Awesome.
Hopefully, I answered that up to your liking.
No, for sure, Nicolina. And I really appreciate your sharing. And I also feel, as you say this, that we can often live in a world where there's a measurement of right and wrong, good or bad, right?
Mm,
But maybe being authentic doesn't need to fit into the box of good or bad. So even if I said, "Oh no, you didn't answer the question," if you're being really authentic, that doesn't really matter. If you've so
mm,
long as you've spoken from that place of authenticity, you've operated
mm.
with the veil of integrity, you've spoken from your heart, spoken in a way that is real truth, then right or wrong kind of just fades away.
I guess what you're saying is right in the sense, I mean, I guess a lot of things come into play as to, our personalities and what shapes us and makes us authentic. And I think, as I said, if there's a fundamental, acceptance of right and wrong and morality and ethics and stuff, and then from that formulates then individuality as to who we are. I think, well, in a way, sometimes you know, when you meet people, you kind of just accept, well, you accept people's personalities and who they are and, how they respond to you and stuff like that. But at the same token, I guess this kind of comes into play with emotional intelligence. It's like, well, if you're dealing with someone who's being resistant or unreceptive and have a low tolerance, they're highly reactive in the sense that they're not willing to participate in conversation. So that also comes and ties into having emotional intelligence and understanding behaviors of people and our clients and stuff like that, because not every client is going to respond appropriately or understand what you're saying. So in terms of authenticity, I think authenticity is a personal thing, definitely. And then, other things can come into play like cultural, religion and things like that. And I think that is all part of being emotional intelligent and understanding that everyone is different in that sense and having that level of self-awareness and then self-awareness of others' emotions and things like that.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on what you've said, Nicolina, because you've touched on some really, really deep
A lot to
and
say.
meaningful notions of living and seeing the world.
I don't know. Look, I see things from a lot of different perspectives, and I think that's something, our brains all wire differently.
Mm.
I think I do take like when I'm at the end of the day, I guess my ultimate foundation is being authentic to me, and it's really important. And I think, as I said, it stems from how I was raised, what experience I had as a child growing up and as a young adult and things like that. So I think when that comes down to understanding everyone in terms of who they are, it's about having a level of emotional intelligence. But I appreciate there's a lot of people out there who aren't authentic to who they are, and maybe they don't even know what authenticity to them means. I mean, we learn that over time, don't we? We don't just know as we're born or as we're a teenager who we really are. We all know as children growing up and young teenagers and young adults, we might not know who we really are, and we might question things and experiences because we don't really know who we are yet.
Yeah, and some people might even say that part of life is discovering
Yeah,
who we
that's right.
are, and
Yeah,
who we are does change. I heard
it
that
does.
our body, for example, every 7 to 10 years, our whole body regenerates. So
Yeah, the cells,
the
that's
body
right.
that is Nicolina right now, is a new body, new physical form of Nicolina that didn't
Mm,
exist 7 to 10 years ago. And
that's
so
right.
I think that then understanding the shifts that can take place in us, and then also the different sides of us, because there's Nicolina, the family person, Nicolina, the pink amazing lawyer. There's different sides of us depending on different contexts. Nicolina, the friend, Nicolina, the customer in the coffee shop. There's many different sides to us, and
Yeah, that's
we
right.
can shift based on what those sides are. And I feel like when you speak about the emotional intelligence and authenticity, I wonder whether it's about understanding which part of ourself to let shine in any given moment, and whether emotional intelligence is part of that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that. Yeah, we all have different facets of our lives, and we wear multiple hats at times, don't we? But I think deep down, understanding authenticity is understanding what makes your heart beat, what makes you happy, all those kind of things. And it's funny, like especially with what I do in personal injury law, and perhaps it might be the same in what you do when you're dealing with lots of clients and things like that. We're often dealing with people who are at the worst time in their life. They're suffering personal injury. They often aren't working. They're on workers' compensation benefits, medical treatment, surgeries, all that kind of stuff. So I can. It's interesting because people we tend to come across people like they're worse, so to speak, as bad as that sounds. It's a reality. And they're, you can tell that deep down beats the heart of a kind person and someone who's is a genuine person, but outside the shell is broken. So I guess, deep down you can sometimes feel the energy of, who people are, and they're expressing themselves completely different to what, you see those glimpses of, I guess you could say their personality, or like it's who they are and stuff like that. But on the exterior, they're emotionally broken because of what they're going through. So tying in with emotional intelligence is understanding that and not being judgmental, and being able to tolerate and understand and have empathy for people in those situations.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the most beautiful parts of the work we can do as lawyers,
Yeah.
clients in those stressful situations, because I believe that our friends are those that are there for us in times of need. When we are in a place of need, we often have different parts of our authentic personality come out. And so to be able to guide and work for people when they're in that real time of need, I believe can be really fulfilling for yourself and those that you serve.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you have it where you're representing your client on a professional level, and, they just really like you because of who you are as a person, not because you're a professional lawyer, but because your energy and the vibe that you give off is something that people can connect with. And I think people sense when you're not being authentic to yourselves. It's like, it's a feeling, it's a vibe. I feel like we're quoting the castle now. We've got quoting Legally Blonde to the castle.
The wise words of the castle.
Oh, I love that movie. Oh, what was the lawyer's name in that movie again? I'll have to look it up. But the famous.
Let's have a quick look at that,
I'm
Nicolina.
going to
You've got.
remember that famous scene in the High Court.
Can
Okay.
you describe that scene for us? Can you help refresh your memory of that one?
Where he's like, we're gonna let's get his name first so we
Let's
put
get
some
that. All
context.
right. Dennis
Hang on.
Donito.
Dennis Donito, of
Yeah.
course. And he's like, mate, you're killing me. Vibe.
Yeah, his meager argument that the eviction goes against the vibe of the Constitution.
Yes, vibe of the Constitution. That is such a classic movie. I loved watching those movies as a kid. Like, I don't know, the ones that had anything to do with lawyers, and it really resonated with me. But the fact that that was an Aussie movie that encompassed different cultures, like, the true Aussie, the diversity in the Aussie, in our culture, like, the Danny Donito, what's he? The Italian. Then you've got the guy that's the Yugoslavian guy, and all the different characters. I mean, that's how we all grew up, right?
Yeah, we did. And it's interesting as you say this now, there's quite a few European lawyers who are portrayed a little bit outside the box, like our friend from the castle. I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you look at diversity and being a lawyer from a place of diversity, what is it like? Are you outside the box? And how do you operate in the spirit of excellence as a lawyer from a diverse background?
Well, look, I think look, Australia, we're a multicultural nation. We grew up with all different cultures in our school, on our street. I think it was the best playground for us growing up to learn about different cultures and to be acceptant of those cultures. When I go back home to Croatia, where I'm from, I kind of sometimes feel a bit like, fish out of water. It's like deep down beats the heart of a Croatian, but I do feel like I'm different because I was raised in Australia. But that being said, yeah, growing up in Australia was amazing in the sense that, as you said, we got so many first-hand experiences of understanding different cultures in our classroom, friends, mates, all that kind of stuff. And I think being, as a professional, especially as a lawyer, in like any, I guess, area of work, it's important to have an understanding of culture and different people's religious beliefs and things like that, because at the end of the day, we deal with so many different people, and we deal with them for a long time. It's not just a one-off transaction. So I think excelling and having excellence in law is understanding and going back to emotional intelligence, it's having that self-awareness in yourself and recognizing people's backgrounds and what ticks for them, what doesn't. Like I often, when I meet someone, if I get a new client inquiry and I hear their surname, I often like to ask, oh, where's your, where are you from? That's an interesting surname. Or I try and guess it, and it's kind of like a breaking the ice thing. And then when I meet with them, if I don't know, I knew Yassel from The Wild Boy, the movie, when I said Yassel Matthew to you. Another Australian Aussie great film. But I will often Google and do Google Translate how to say hello in their language, just as an icebreaker when I meet people. And half the time I won't say it right.
Yeah.
But it's a good little icebreaker, and I think people appreciate that because they go, wow, like you've taken this, like, and often people are like, oh, you speak Greek, or you said, I mean, no, I don't, I just Googled it. And it's like, it's an icebreaker for people because they see that you put the effort in to want to learn the language in one word, but, enough that you're connecting with someone, not just personally, but, culturally as well.
Yeah. And one of the beautiful things about Australia is our diversity. So to be able to have lawyers from different diverse backgrounds representing their clients, I think that definitely does make a massive difference. So
it's the same with me. Like, I guess being Croatian, we can often assist with serving other, Bosnians or Serbians and other nationalities close to Croatia, obviously previously known as Yugoslavia, and understanding and, speaking the language because it's not that too dissimilar. Some words are different and the dialect is slightly different. But yeah, definitely it's, I mean, look, my parents have been here for 40 years. My dad still has a heavy accent kind of thing. So, and he still needs me to explain things to him in his way, in his European way. And, he'll speak broken English to me and we laugh because I'll then speak broken Croatian to him. And it's an exchange in a different way, but we get each other and we understand each other. So, and that's just one facet, at the end of the day, we're still Aussie. We're born here. That's who we are. And ultimately, being able to serve all of our clients, regardless of their background, is paramount for me as a lawyer. And if I feel I'm not serving someone appropriately because of a language barrier, of a language I don't speak or I don't understand, then it would be in my interest or the best interest of the client and my interest to move them on and pass them on to another law firm. And I will do that sometimes if I know someone's come to me and they speak Chinese or something and I can't relate or translate appropriately, then perhaps it's better they are I pass them on to a law firm that I know that there's people that speak that language. I don't think there's any shame in that. And that is the beauty of being in Australia, is that we can do that for our clients because there are so many lawyers from different backgrounds. So, I mean, I'll, do your best. But if there is that communication breakdown in that sense, I mean, why not? Let's make the client's life easier.
Yeah. And doing all this in the place of from a place of inclusivity. So not needing in many instances to actually segregate different cultural backgrounds from each other, but instead having a wonderful country of inclusion where all different backgrounds are embraced. And there is the ability to be able to represent clients from different backgrounds as well, where the values that they hold as a client and that you hold as a lawyer align. There can still be, cultural differences where the values align. But I think on top of that, there's the added bonus where people from your own cultural heritage can come to you and you can represent them and you just really get where they're coming from as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's all about what's important for the client and serving their best interests. And, inclusion is so important. But, at the end of the day, you can only do your best. And people are usually going to go with the lawyer that they're comfortable with. And that's okay if you don't, I often say that to people when they're lawyer shopping, go with, at the end of the day, we all deliver the same service. The cost agreement might be slightly different, but go with who you feel comfortable with. And I think that comes down to a personality thing, a connection with the person emotionally. And it's okay if someone decides, hey, I'd rather go to somewhere else where I feel like I connect better with a lawyer. That's okay because they're better to go, better suited to that lawyer or law firm. So, but yeah, by all means, our doors are wide open, anyone off the street to walk in. And that's the beauty about the country we live in.
Yeah, and when you speak about inclusion as an example, you help me remember this story that I found very funny. And I think that there's some stereotypes when you look at different people from different ethnicities. There can be some stereotypes that carry across. And I think that
Mm.
there's some stereotypes for older European men that can carry across. And also, when you're saying before about the way you need to explain things to your dad. So, in my experience, and my dad is like this as well. There can be a bit of arrogance amongst this sort of older European men. I'm not really sure where it comes from. It's probably something that comes from Europe or something like this. But I remember a particular situation where this is years ago, and my dad was a refrigeration mechanic. So this is actually back in my university days, right? This is a long time ago. And
Mm.
I was helping my dad just carry his tools during the university holidays, and we stopped to get a gyros for lunch.
Gross.
While we are getting the gyros for lunch, we decided, you know what, we're going to get the van washed at this car wash that was next door. All right,
Yeah.
fantastic. So we go in there, drop the car off, we order our gyros, we sit outside with the gyros, and the owner of this shop was a beautiful traditional Greek gyros. So it was a Greek man that was making the gyros.
Mm. Yeah.
We order, we sit down, we start eating. And then when you go to the car wash, you get those, rectangle shape. They almost look like a telephone kind of shape. And they're the beeper. The beeper goes off
Ah, yes.
when the
Yeah, the
car's ready. So we're
beeper.
sitting on the table eating the gyros. Then all of a sudden, the beeper starts vibrating. The owner of the gyro shop picked up the beeper. He goes, "Hello, Yasu," like this. It keeps beeping. It keeps beeping. He spoke again to it and it keeps beeping. So then he slams it down the table and he
Oh
goes,
my goodness.
Gamoto. And I think Gamoto means something like the F word or something in Greek.
Oh,
And it was an amazing classical situation of, funny time of the arrogance of the older European, which I think is so funny.
yes.
But
I totally relate to those kind of scenarios growing up. And it was probably worse when I was younger, when my dad's the language barrier is probably worse for my dad. And yeah, it's interesting. It's so many funny things we can look back and laugh on, and it's funny. My father's gone back to Croatia to retire, and he loves being there. It's where he was born, but at the same time, he's an Aussie in a way. Like even he goes, oh, they do things differently here. Like he remembers that, but it's like he's changed in his ways as well. So going back has been, I guess, bittersweet in that sense.
yeah, and they can see what the country's like. I remember when my grandfather was alive, he would always say to my mum how women in Greece were so much better, and that
Pardon, what was that?
how women in Greece were so much better,
Oh,
and
okay.
that women in Greece they just don't smoke, they don't do anything that's really bad, they don't smoke, they don't drink, and he
Okay.
hadn't been back to Greece for years upon years at that point, and then when he eventually did get back to Greece he quickly realized that in fact the women in Greece do smoke just like women here smoke.
So
And
had the
so
times changed, or did he just not pick that up when he was
I think what
there?
happens is when people migrate into Australia and they don't go back for years, they hold a fixed view of what their homeland was like.
Mm.
And the way that the world is shaped and things happen, and some of these things are picked up by all countries, and it's part of the progress of each of the nations in the same direction in the world. But because they haven't been back to their homeland for so long, they remember it differently. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, I think that
I
that's,
totally, yeah, understand where you're coming from. That actually brings back memories. Yeah, I remember saying things like, it's not like that anymore. Like times have changed. I
mm,
remember saying that over the years to my excuse me, to my parents. So yeah, these are all the interesting things you and I and like many others in this country have had the pleasure of growing up and experiencing.
yeah.
So
And when you know your own family story and the challenges of being a migrant, that
Mm,
your own family experienced. Do you feel like that sits within you and it helps drive you on a daily basis?
totally. Yeah, that's, gosh, I just have so many memories. We being, I guess, born here and educated here. I know we lived in Croatia a couple of years when we were younger, before we started primary school. And we were already a step behind because we couldn't speak English. And then, the stories of, I guess my dad couldn't speak English when he came in and things like that. And then the experiences he had, and even my mum. I mean, my mum was born here, but she was from parents with a Croatian background. And long story short, yeah, it was a different lifestyle growing up, and even they experienced hardships, and there was, cultural diversity for them, and difficulties and challenges, and not just, things on the work site, in general in life, and just trying to get by, and that there was that segregation between, the migrants and these, Australians that were already here, and all those kind of things. And we grew up in that environment where, we would hear stories, and they were often not nice stories because there was, discrimination and things like that. And so even we as kids and teenagers grew up with a bit of that. I guess the times have changed. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm too old to understand what goes on now in schools and things like that, and if that kind of stuff still exists. And I don't know if because we were like kind of first generation here, so maybe we experience was a lot different or harsher. I'm not sure, but for us there was definitely a lot of that, and I think that's what kind of drive me to want to be a lawyer is believing in, like embracing cultural diversity and things like that, and acceptance, and having all those belief systems around the law and what was right and what was wrong, and all that kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, our background has a big play on who we become. I'm sure you can resonate with that as well.
Yeah, I definitely believe that our background and where we come from 100% shapes who we are and where we are today. And it also shapes the impact that we create
Mm.
for the future.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. It's not just one way. It's not just for, the migrants that came in the 40s, 50s, or 60s. And as we get older, we learn to accept who we are, and we can peel away the layers, and let go of things and hardships and resentment and stuff like that. Because I think we are constantly learning as individuals, as humans, even as lawyers. Like I say every day to my team, like we are always learning as lawyers. Don't become complacent in law in your life, because you're always growing, you're always developing, and it's really important, and it comes down to what I keep standing for: be authentic to you, because I think success will come when you are true to who you are. Like, do you ever have that feeling, or have you ever had that feeling where you want to be someone, but you don't feel like it's you, or you're trying to achieve something that doesn't feel right, and it's like you're going against the grain of the universe? It's that knowing and understanding that you're living by who you are, and people see that, people can feel that.
Yeah, and
So,
embracing your own passions, embracing what's important to you in your
mm,
journey.
yeah.
So I remember when I first started AMK Law, which is about 11 years ago now, I think, 10 or 11 years.
Uh-huh.
2004 we started, but
Yeah.
back then
Um,
I had the the resonance of my father's voice in my ear, which was, Matthew, if you want to be good in business, you want to be a good lawyer, you have to give everything up and just focus on law. And so another passion that I have is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And
yes, I have.
yeah, I really love.
Congratulations.
No, thank you, bro. I feel like having something else that we love and to be
Hmm.
able to embrace, whether it be a hobby, another interest,
It's
something that
important,
can
isn't it?
help us be emotionally strong, physically strong, and then helps
Mm.
us bring the best version of ourselves to the table is really important. And I learned this almost in a hard way, because when I started AMK Law, that resounding sound of my dad's voice was playing in my ear. And for the first couple of years of having established AMK Law, I didn't train jiu-jitsu at all. And I thought, oh yeah, it doesn't really matter. I just need to focus solely on being the
Mhm.
best lawyer I can be, nothing else. And then I started experiencing a lot of anxiety, and I went through the wisdom of my wife, that woman's intuition. She then led me and said, "Look, I've found a psychologist for you, and this psychologist was a specialist in anxiety." And the first thing the psychologist said was, "You need to get back into your martial arts for your own
Ah,
physical and mental health." And so, by being able to embrace what's important to me, absolutely helped me succeed even more in my career and in my work and through AMK law. So I feel like that's a great example of being able to
that's right.
embrace what's important to you authentically, like you've been speaking of,
Yeah.
to bring the best version of yourself forward. Because from that place, you then able to serve other people
Shine.
better as well.
You'll
Yeah.
be able to shine bright and people can see that. Yeah, I love that story. I think that's really, really a lovely story because yeah, you kind of went back to the grassroots, didn't you, in that sense? And I have a similar story in my background, having been a cyclist and racing on the velodrome and doing the national series on the road and things like that, and going through the ranks as a child in the Academy of Sport, and then
Wow.
starting law and giving up cycling to do that. And then I actually didn't race or do anything and stopped like you, and something was missing. And I went back to, it was actually during my studies I stopped. And then when I became a lawyer and I could afford to buy a bike again, it's very expensive. After a couple of years, I bought it back and I got back into it, and I felt, you know, and I had that kind of balance. And I guess being a sporter and having that sporting background, I think you're like me, you want to win at everything. So it's having that balance between being able to train at an elite level and and feel like you are successful in that sense, and then being a lawyer and trying to achieve other things in your life and your career, and but you know, also accepting that you can't be an athlete in that sense and a lawyer. Well, you can, but you will do it with difficulties and challenges, and it depends about the support system around you. Um, so yeah, it's important to have that work-life balance, isn't it? And remembering your grassroots and where you came from and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's essentially what made you the person you are today, right? So
Yeah, I think that our hobbies and our interests are really important for us. And it's interesting when you speak about cycling and the will to win and the impact of being a lawyer in that. Because obviously, if you're running a law firm, you're not going to be able to compete on the same platform as people who are devoting all of their
no,
time, all
that's
of their
right.
life, all of their energy into being the cyclist. This is also where I feel it's really important to understand and see and envision what does winning to you look like. So myself, for example, I don't like and I don't compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And this is something that for years have questioned, and I've asked different people and different teachers, hey, should I be competing? And I feel like now I'm more at peace with not competing than I've ever been. The reason why I don't compete, even though I push myself as much as I possibly can in the training sessions, I'm always training with people that are gearing up for competitions. I'm training partners for those people, but for me, I don't want the pressure of needing to win at competition level to impact the way that I embrace jujitsu. And
Mm,
so part of me for a long time
interesting.
was feeling like, oh, am I running away from the fear of loss? But I honestly feel I'm not. I honestly feel hand on heart that I like the idea of protecting and preserving the place of jiu-jitsu where there's no pressure to the extent of
Mm,
actually training to win a competition, but instead it's a
yeah.
place that the
Mm,
mental and physical health and focus is
yeah,
what
very
it's all
important.
geared towards. So I feel like if we understand what winning is for us, then we
Mm,
can find the different solutions and ways of balancing to achieve what those wins on a personal
mm.
level mean.
It's a really good way you put it because I think a lot of people, especially athletes, you know, when they give up sport, they're suffering, you know, a sense of loss, because they've devoted their entire life to that sport, and it is hard, you know, and you often find people will either completely go cold turkey, or they'll slowly, you know, go into areas of coaching or things like that. And I think, you know, I was very similar to you in the sense like, you know, I loved training and pushing myself and winning in that sense, and being part of a team environment and the camaraderie that comes with sport and what you learn. what you learn ethically, being in sports, and what you can take away from it, it then morphs into your personal life and professional life. And like you, I did the cold turkey thing.
Mhm.
And I did get back into it before I started my business, and did it to the point of acceptance that I wasn't going to be training like I used to and traveling, and it was too much. And I had to accept that, because then I would suffer in my work. Because, being tired from training hours upon hours, and things like that. And you can't do it all. So, but I think as we get older, we go through different stages in our life, and other things become important. So for me, my baby is my business in
Mm.
that sense. And I would rather ride my bike with my family and my husband and son, and go for a joyful ride on the bike path. I don't like to ride on the road anymore. It's like I've grown up, and I don't know, am I weaker? Maybe. I don't want to put my body through that strain. And I also have become more safety conscious.
Mm.
I don't know. I used to do hours and kilometers on end on the road. And the things I look back and go, God, I did that. Like, I went down that mountain at 80 kilometers an hour
Yeah.
on two wheels. Like, what was I thinking at 4 a.m. in the morning?
Mhm.
And now I'd just rather go on the bike path. But having that balance is also still important. Like, remembering what joy can still come from keeping fit, and things like that. Not to the point of crazy competitive athletic, keeping fit in that sense. I can't even think of doing any of that stuff now. And I guess it's like you've come to a point of acceptance where you won't compete, right?
Yeah, I don't have plans to, and I feel like it's wisdom where we can understand the
Yeah.
way that we want to be embracing our passions.
And how many times a week do you train then? Or
I
keep at it to
train,
keep fit?
I aim to train 6 days a week, but typically
Wow.
would be training 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And I feel
Still
that
epic.
this level of commitment helps me in every other area of my life. So something
Yeah.
that's really interesting is being a lawyer, we often measure based on time and we're very time conscious. And at one stage I was feeling like, well, I couldn't actually physically fit in the time to train every day, for example. When something that was
Mm.
really helpful is one of our guests, Kieran Robson Garth. He's a engineer, he's a gun engineer. He started his business about the same time and he continually kept training. And I remember times speaking with him or working on a matter for him, writing a contract or something like this. And in that discussion, he'd be in his car on the way to jiu-jitsu training. And I started feeling as well, if he can do this, then I should be able to do this as well. And what's amazing in this experience is I feel like when we can embrace what is important to us, what we really enjoy, then it's almost like it helps us open up more time and then we're more efficient
Mm.
in what we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And it's just having that balance and acceptance. You don't have to do it at that crazy level, but you can do it for enjoyment, and keeping fit and having that work-life balance. And yeah, I agree. It's very, very important to have something else outside of your passion, your work, your baby, your business.
Mm.
And, we put so much into, as business owners, we're not just the lawyers, we wear so many hats. We're the accountant, we're the counselors for our clients, the lawyer, all those different things and hats we wear. And we need to look after ourselves. We still have to remember to look after ourselves. And I get in trouble all the time, and my husband tells me all the time, you need to stop and you care and worry about everyone, and everyone comes first before you, and you have to stop and take a break. And it's a good reminder, because when you're passionate about something, and it's good to have someone who can look and say, no, stop, take a break, go for a walk, get on the bike, go for a ride, clear your mind, your mind, your body, your soul in that sense, rejuvenate yourselves in that sense, because you do have to give yourself time to be able to give back to people, and thrive and be the best person you can, be the
Yeah.
best lawyer you can be, business owner.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
So
and you do that by being the best version of yourself.
that's right. Yeah, that's
N-
it. So
Nikolina, we've heard on the podcast plenty of ways in which jiu-jitsu principles relate and can help us when we're negotiating.
mhm.
Is there a principle from your former elite cycling days that you can share where the principle of cycling relates to negotiations?
Oh, look, slow and steady sometimes wins the race. You don't, as being a long distance athlete and doing, 120-kilometer races, it's not always, you don't always win the race by being the first off the start line.
Mm.
So patience, and especially in the cycling race, there's so many different breaks that happen, and it's reading the riders around you, reading the bunch, we would say, and knowing who's ahead, which competitors are ahead. Do they have the ability to go the distance? Who's with them? Are they working in a team? Is it other teams that they're with, or their own team members? Are they going to work together in the breakaway, and how much distance do we have on them, and things like that? And that's probably a very important skill, especially in that sense, reading the field. And it's the same with negotiations, understanding your client, and understanding the nature of your case and what you're dealing with, and then dealing with the defendants or the insurers in my area of law. And sometimes, we do this job as lawyers, or at least in PI, and we gather evidence, we put the case together, get medical assessments, and then we meet with we work out we share the documents, and we work out who the insurer or the other side is, and you go, oh, that person, they're all right. In the sense, you're probably still going to get the same outcome in the sense, but you're dealing with different personality types, and you start to gauge and understand how different defendants run their matters, and the what you're going to get back from them in your negotiations, or how they play ball, so to speak. So understanding, being able to have that emotional intelligence and self-awareness, and understanding positive and negative things about your client and the other side in the case, it's extremely important. And that all comes back down to, I always say that having been in elite sport and things like that, and what I've learned from sportsmanship and dedicating myself to getting fit and having self-discipline, has taught me so many amazing things as a child, and being in that sport in my adult life and as a lawyer. And I think if we can be consciously aware that we're always growing as people, and accepting, acknowledging that you might have got it wrong, but not letting your emotions excuse me, you can't let your emotions take control, if that makes sense. And if you ever have a moment where I didn't handle that right, reflect back on it, and it's okay. Remember, self-love, learn for the next time. But I think if we're constantly growing in that sense, and learning and taking on those skills from life experiences, whether it be sport or anything, it does play a big role in negotiations. I'm sure you can say the exact same from your background in sports. It's probably helped you immensely.
Absolutely.
And you can see that when you hire people or you deal with people, not knowing if they've got a sporting background or where they come from, but you can tell if someone has emotional intelligence, because it's about understanding your component and what triggers them, and seeing if they react and things like that. And I think sometimes when other people have emotional intelligence, and you do, and you can kind of relate, and the negotiations can be a lot more smoother, as opposed to when you're dealing with someone who's got low tolerance or highly reactive. They're driven by their emotions, and which then controls their behavior and outcome. Then you can kind of go, you kind of know, oh, this isn't going well, and it's not me here. And then you kind of go, well, how are we going to deal with this? And explaining that to your client, because your client's sitting there going, what's going on? What's happening? I don't understand.
Yeah. And it's amazing hearing these sorts of impacts that cycling and your time in sport has helped you in the work that you do, leading a team, relating with clients. And you've shared so much with us today,
I know,
Nikolina.
who would have thought I would be talking about cycling?
Yeah, but
that was way in the past.
I really loved your answer and the information you shared on cycling, because it's so true that sport does give us insights into how to negotiate life, how to negotiate in law, how to do things in various ways, because we learn so much.
And you don't even know when you're doing it. when you were a young child doing and playing sports, it's actually teaching you when you get older. And it's the same thing that I try and teach my son, and my husband's the same. Both have backgrounds in cycling. It's how we met as kids.
Mm.
And my husband would always says to my son, when you have a clean bike, you race well because you're motivated, your mindset, you're feeling good. When your bike's clean, you feel good. Like it's the whole package. It's going in there with that positive mindset. But yeah, you're so right. Like, actually, you just made me remember, to be honest. So thank you for reminding me about this part of my history, because it reminded me that, who would have thought, like, most people think cycling is an individual sport.
Yes.
It's a team sport, and there's so much to read in a bike race, whether it be on the velodrome or the road. It's not just like you get on a bike and off you go, you pedal away, let's see if you can get first over the line. There's so many dynamics and things that can come into play, and so many things that you have to read, and sometimes you get it wrong. And that's okay.
So cycling is not just about being, well and truly into your 60s, very much overweight, donning the lycra and having a coffee. It's more than that.
They call them mammal or something, male. Was it mature age men in lycra or something?
Sorry to anyone that fits that definition.
That's it.
Yeah. And I also love what you just shared about what your husband says about having that clean bike. So something I do every single day, really, it's the first thing I do every day when I start work is clean my desk with a wipe and spray some screen cleaner on my computer screen. And I do those two things, even if my computer screen and my desk is pretty clean. I might just get a small dot off or something. Because
I can't remember the last time I cleaned my screen. You're putting me to shame here.
Because I feel like it's the same energy and same focus behind cleaning your bike. Because I can imagine as a cyclist, just like I do when I clean the desk and computer screen, it's not necessarily the cleaning itself that's so impactful, but what is powerful in this is
the preparation,
intention to have a clean piece of equipment, and the sharpening of the mind and connection with clean outcome that happens through that process of cleaning. So you're cleaning your bike, for example. I can imagine you're also seeing yourself perform well in the race. You're preparing for the best outcome because you have your clean bike.
Visualizing.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big part of it all as well.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I know when we go to settlement conference or court, there is a sense you got to psych yourself up and be positive and all those kind of things. So yeah, it's funny. Maybe we do it in our lives and we don't even realize in other aspects of our life, probably something we can think about it. Another point of discussion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And Nikolina, it's true that you've shared so much with us today. To give our listeners 3 wonderful takeaway points based on what Nikolina has been sharing, I want to highlight these 3. Number 1 is the meaning, the understanding, and the place to be coming from through authenticity. So Nikolina spoke about knowing your values, understanding who you are, and accepting yourself, because from this place of authenticity, you can really help others through the negotiation process. A second wonderful point you've been sharing with us today, Nikolina, is about strength in diversity. So connecting with people through your own place and passion of diversity, from a place of inclusion and embracing other people from diverse backgrounds. That can really be a powerful way of negotiating, by embracing diversity, your own diversity and diversity of others. And a third wonderful takeaway point that I really love, Nikolina, is you being able to share about your cycling. I really love the point about slow and steady sometimes wins the race. It's not necessarily about burning yourself out in the very first moment of a race. Sometimes that's just going to make you tired. You'll have nothing left at the end. But taking care of every turn of the wheel, making sure that you're in that best place throughout the journey to achieve the outcome.
That's right. And it's not just for you, it's for your client, isn't it? In their best interest. And sometimes you got to look after them and take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Strategically positioning yourself so that you can go the long haul is sometimes really important. And I think sometimes when you look at the strategy in legal disputes, understanding where you need to be and understanding also that sometimes it's going to be a long, hard fought battle before you can achieve the outcome in a
That's
matter.
right.
Dennis
Yeah.
Donito in his High Court challenge probably would agree.
I think we have to go watch that movie again. It was such a great Australian movie. It's yeah, definitely one that I will always remember growing up, and I always still make references to that movie to this day.
Yeah, yeah.
Is
I
that an
can see.
Australian thing? Is that an Australian thing, or is it just me? Like,
Well,
I'm not often referring to lines in movies. The Bend and Snap,
yeah.
Legally Blonde.
Legally Blonde. I'm probably not as into Legally Blonde as what you are, Nicolina, but
Oh, I think.
Bend and Snap, I like it.
Do you remember? You don't remember that line from? No, have you watched
I've definitely
it?
watched Legally Blonde. I wouldn't be able
Look,
to
it
sit
was.
here in the podcast with you, Nicolina, and relate at all if I hadn't watched Legally Blonde. But
I
yeah,
know, right? Do a repeat of it.
yeah,
No, yeah. Look, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Yeah, I've loved the content that we've discussed and the topics we've raised, and getting to know you on a personal level. It's been lovely to chat, and yeah, I really appreciate the time, and I hope I've been able to connect with people and show people a different side of myself, but not just me personally, but just being a lawyer and what that's about.
yeah. And also encouraging and inspiring other people to be authentic, embrace what
Yeah.
they love, step outside the box if they need to, and you do all this so well, Nicolina. So it's been wonderful connecting, and thanks for being part of rolling through negotiations.
Appreciate the invite. Thank you so much for having me. We'll have to keep in contact and chat again next time.